I'm going to jump straight into prospecting. And as referenced earlier on, for those who could hear me, this is a snippet of the configuration webinar that I did a couple of months ago that I forgot to record. So you'll see a bit of this as I set up this system for CRM. So the first agenda item, prospecting. What we need to do is we need to set up some resource custom fields to allow us to use the system in that way. So not everyone has that configuration menu option, but the system admins do, and on these webinars I show that aspect so that you can work with them to get these things set up. And this is recorded, so you'll be able to see it again later. And in the resource custom fields, you'll see there's a category called prospect. And then what we can do is create custom fields that relate to that. And you can create them against the contact, against the organization, or against the site. And you can see that there's 3 being created against the category called prospect. And this just helps lay it out as well as filter for information later on. The field name is prospect, and the list is going to be a yes/no. The comms type is a field that has a list. For example, to attract those prospects is going to occur. Is it going to be a mail, an email, a phone call, something else? And then campaigns, and you'll add to this list over time, and that helps you later on when you'll see I search for a campaign to track who is in this campaign and who I need to follow up on. So they're the 3 that we've set up in this demo. You can structure it however you want, and that's why it is kind of a bit of a platform product rather than a pre-configured product in that way. And you'll be able to work out the best way you want to use that yourselves. Once that's done, when I go back into my resources module, and for example, if I drill in on a company, you'll see that there is a prospect custom field associated to organization. So the first one is we tag at organization level, is this organization a prospect, yes, no? And they're tagged as yes. And then if I have a list of people, like multiple people within a organization, I would also tag them. We've changed this in our own product to be key prospect, or but in this particular one, if I was to click in on Ali, there's only one in this instance, but you might have 20 people in a company that you've got in your database. Under the prospecting link for Ali, you can see he's not flagged as being key, and he's the only one. So if it's an organization that's key that you were trying to prospect to, you would probably select yes there. Then you determine what type of communication. This can be a list, a checklist rather than a drop-down. So you can select, I'm going to do all of the above, excuse me. And that will help you to track when you're doing mail outs and email mail merges and the like. And then which campaign are they going to belong to? And that will align with your strategy of who you're targeting. So if you're doing a campaign into the, say you're a quantity surveyor wanting to partner up with engineers on bids into infrastructure, you might have an engineering prospect database, and you will be basically tagging them to be into that. Thank you. Must have brought me water. Isn't that lovely? Into that campaign. And so when you want to see who you've emailed into a campaign, you want to tag them in that way. And so once you've finished updating those fields per person, saving that, that information is going to come out in this new report that not everyone would have, that you can get as soon as this webinar's over. If you're interested, just contact us and we'll sort it out. So busily working out how you can gain these contacts through networking and other avenues that you may have, and putting them into UniPhi as new contacts against organizations builds up that prospecting database. Once you're comfortable that database is sufficient to start prospecting, what you would do is run a report that's called Resource Custom Fields Report. It's a generic name because it's used for more than just prospecting. It's in the program module, subnav, sorry, of reports. And when I run that, you can see that I'm going to filter for prospect and external. Not that that would matter because it's unlikely you flagged an internal person to sell to. And view. In this instance, I'm just going to show it in HTML. You can spit it to Excel and put filters in here. There is another feature coming that didn't quite make this webinar, unfortunately, but it's imminent, where you'll be able to actually not run this report, but just view it within a UniPhi screen. And just like in Excel, when you have auto filters turned on along the top, there'll be auto filtering within the screen, so you don't have to follow the process where you send to Excel and then filter in there. But even if you do send to Excel, which I'll do as well, one of the things we've done to help the prospecting person is these are links back into the profile of the individual. So, you know, once you're you know, going through these people and you want maybe potentially following up on a phone call or something like that, you've got their contact details within this screen. You can make your phone call, and as it's dialing, doing the old control click that I've been showing people in these webinars, you've opened them up, and associated to that person, as I drill down, is comments. And you can see there was a comment done a little over a month ago to say that we phoned him, and this is the second one. And as usual, it would be phoned, not in, did not leave message, or maybe left message, whatever it is. And so if it's a richer conversation, you actually get to talk to Ali, you can write more text in there and flesh that out. And so, you know, that constantly you know, occurs. If you're within the resources screen and you want to do that, rather than run the Excel, there is also another way. If I just go back to dashboard. You saw that there was 2 campaigns going on. If I use the search up here, it actually searches custom fields, even though you may not see them in this data grid view here. So if I was to type construction, June, so I know that's the campaign, and hit enter, this is the list of people that we've targeted into that campaign. So that's a subset of the data. You can see it's just one scroll down the page. And again, as an end user who's contacting them, I've got the phone number there, and I can click on their name into a new screen and make the comments as I go through one at a time to follow up on those people. Similarly, I can change that to be engineering. And if I know the database isn't that big, I can probably just do that. And they're the people who are in the engineering campaign. And so now there's 2 methods to actually reduce your data: exporting to Excel and filtering, or filtering within the system here. And there's a third method coming, which you'll see in a future webinar next month. So if you did export it to Excel, and clicking in the top cell here, you can then filter, and away you go. And you'll see that the people still link back into UniPhi. So if I've used Excel to do that, I'm still being able to click back into the UniPhi application and log the information against them here. That opened up Edge because this is a new laptop, because mine died this morning, which has caused a bit of chaos here this morning. Right, so we've got that basic part of prospecting. You can also use this dump out here as a mail merge into an email, or into a literal physical mail into Word, as your fields there are available, or importing into other tools like Campaign Monitor and the like to update that type of software for your email out campaigns. This would be the report to use. So we're busily working on our prospecting. We've snagged Ali from Wesfarmers, which is a good lead for us, and we've decided that he's actually interested in our product. The next step in actually tracking that lead, because you know we may have a 1,000 strong prospecting database, we might get that down to 50, 100 leads, depending on the size of the organization and how many people are doing this. That process, we spin those into issues that we want to actually track and have actions and follow up with. And so a bit of a manual step, but it's enables all of the benefits of the issues module, where you get your actions and escalation and the like. So what I would do is I would set up a sales lead program that looks like this. The parent project being sales leads, and then the locations that I'm selling in as individual children projects. And Ali's from Melbourne, so we would select the Melbourne project. We would go to Issues, and we would add, as you can see there as examples, Ali. Now, you can put contact details in there. The other way you can do it is actually paste a link to the resource in the comment, and that way you can just click on the resource to get the details when you're following up. But the reason we're doing this is that in here is all of the abilities for due dates, and you know, if you're corresponding with him via email and he's emailing you, you can use the Outlook plugin to append to these particular conversations. And then when you go into Ali's profile or in the Wesfarmers profile and click correspondence, you can see those conversations happening on an ongoing basis. You can assign it to your salesperson, or they may be setting this up themselves. You would flag it as a sales issue, and you would give it a due date of when you expect it to move to the next phase, being an opportunity or submission. As I said, you could also, and I've only got one hand at the moment, which is making things a little bit awkward, but if I'd done this in the new tab, and I could have just copied his profile into that screen there. So I'm going to have to do a few clicks to get that to happen. But if I go back to the reports, and people can live with me being a bit jumpy aroundy, I'll go back to resources, and I will go into all projects. There he is. All you do is you copy that and you paste it into there. And then you've got the reference point to come to him later. And so as all issues within UniPhi, you can then start to track a portfolio of sales leads either within a location or across the organization. And you'll see in a moment that that sales lead lives on when it moves to the next phase. So I'd even do it across all projects, and I would just select sales, and that's giving me all of the items that have progressed past the prospecting stage into a sales lead profile. As that goes through, you would drill in on them and add extra actions, capturing any correspondence. You can see here, here's an email that's come in that is you sending out to that person. And so the conversation just keeps going on. Hopefully we get some good news, and Ali from Wesfarmers is keen on us actually engaging with him further, and we're meeting with him and we're scoping out the potential proposal that we might be doing, and in that item we would actually create a Wesfarmers project. It'll be a new project called Wesfarmers, and in our organisation we put UniPhi deployment, or back in the old days when we did consulting and all the rest of it, we differentiated it by the service in the name. You'll have your own methods for that. Obviously sectors are important, so selecting the right one, project type, and service line if you've got multiple service lines, and the location being Melbourne. And then the phase, which is the important part for this conversation, which is into opportunity phase. So your life cycle will be, again, this is a platform product, you would have designed your own life cycle, but opportunity and submission are two common phases that clients will use to track the movement from a lead into something that's more meatier, and you might actually get something out of it with those people. Equal to that, you may move them straight into submission. It doesn't have to go into opportunity, and you're now ready to build up a proposal with that person. You may have a template for this and copy it in rather than do it the way I'm doing it. We have a business development manager role that you would tick for the person following up. I'll just call project manager for now. This sample database doesn't have that yet. And the rest I'm pretty much happy with not having to fill in. That's all I really need. The other one you may have in this pre-sale list, instead of just the two, is a go, no go. And you can even design questions that you would answer within that through the custom field. So when people create the go, no go conversation, they would actually fill in a bunch of questions similar to the prioritization framework, which exists at the bottom down here. And you can even use the prioritization framework potentially to come to a decision, are you going to proceed to chase this lead or not? And that's all configurable under the configuration system. Thank you for that, Carl. So that opportunity now exists in the system. And again, if I go to all projects and I hit my little modal filter here, I can filter for opportunity and get an understanding of all of them. The missing part of that puzzle that I have to do is, and you can see then you've got basically your leads as well as in that opportunity list, but some will be companies and some will be just emerging leads. I need to get Ali's issue into my new project. So I would go to the Sales Leads Melbourne project. I'd go to the issue and I would tick, hit move and select Wes Farmers. And so that issue is now moved into that project and we can have more and more conversations with Ali that are appended to that issue. Once we've successfully corresponded with Ali long enough to get him to want a quote, proposal, bid, whatever it might be, we would move the life cycle phase for this project into a submission. That's a relatively simple thing to do. When drilled into the project, you're just changing the phase here to submission. Alternatively, this is often done, maybe the opportunity to bid go no-go is more often than from opportunity to submission, but in bulk. And a lot of people aren't aware of the fact that you can actually move a whole bunch of projects from one life cycle phase to the other on bulk using these tick boxes. And so if I wanted to move, for example, the Coles Burwood East and Wes Farmers UniPhi deployment into submission phase, feeding it into submission, I would do that by ticking the two, selecting the life cycle bulk update, changing it to submission and hitting save. And so now they're not in the list because my filter chip here is still opportunity. But if I change that to submission, we'll see our Wes Farmers project again. And we've got 4 projects at the submission stage in this fictitious organization. Once you're in, so once you're in submission, what you might do again is update the an action, or which would lead to the due date as well, for this issue that's lived its life right from the beginning as a sales lead, as being proposal due. And you can even set up templates within UniPhi that have standard responses to these things. And it'll automatically assign to the right role and give a certain amount of time to prep, but obviously the due date alters every bid. And that way, when you look back at the issue, these dates can represent when things are due, or alternatively, and a lot of people don't know about this view in the system, if you select task in the portfolio summary dashboard, you get everything that's going on, which again, I can filter by category being sales, and I get when things are due. It actually says proposal due 23rd of May. So I've missed the deadline already. Damn it. And so, building up this list, you'll be able to have a portfolio view of when things are dropping in and potentially landing for your business as a pipeline of business opportunities. Okay. There's a few other ways you can track due dates. Some people create their quotes out of UniPhi, or at worst, you would want to upload your final bid, and often it's a combination of the two, because sometimes it's a small quote. UniPhi is quite good at automating small documentation, but then if you need something that's richer with graphic design and desktop publishing and the like, and using InDesign or Word or what have you, you can still upload that document into UniPhi. So that way, if people need to find information about things, they can search by sector in the modal filter, aged care, what have you, and then I've some filters for submission, which is why I'm missing the proposal. If I remove that chip, there'll be a proposal template, and I can then see all of the proposals that have existed in the business and who it was sent to if they have a contract set up against them. And that gives me an ability to maybe copy one and start the next bid if I can find a similar proposal. So it's definitely worth getting that document in as a worst case scenario, even if it's a external document uploaded. And so you design your proposal template the way you like it. There's a third benefit to that I'll come to in a moment. And so you'll have your steps down here. This is linking to a contract if you've created one as a pending contract. Rich text box to have boilerplate text in that you can then edit if you wish, similar to the terms and conditions one here, has some boilerplate text in there. But equally the price. And we put two steps here with the ability to hide the output. One is if there's a contract being set up for the price. The other is if you've done it in the revenue system. And so I'm just going to leave this open for a moment in my proposal and go back to our Wesfarmers project in the system. And go to the revenue module. And if you've structured up your service codes, it may be something that you can use to estimate. The other method is through the contracts. And you can go in under these service codes and just put in, descriptions and time material rates. I'm just going to go back up and chuck a number in for now though. And that builds up your quote. And if I go back to the document that we were in before and just save, that's now in the document itself. Doing that does have flow-on benefits. That number is used in some standard dashboards in the system. And so now that I've got that in there, it doesn't have to be in this document, just has to be in the revenue module here. I can analyze my dashboards in a moment and it'll include this $12,500. But in terms of my document, I will just continue to finish the document. And as you can see, there's an attachment section, which could be where you upload your actual proposal and the other steps would be hidden. And you would just browse for the file that you've sent to the client as your proposal, or you could save it from email into the system with the attachment. But the best thing about that being is you've got that lodged in the repository. People can search for it and find it and use it again. If you are using UniPhi to actually issue it, you would then potentially have a distribution control that has the client, which you can tick and then email when you've published the document. So once it's awaiting sign-off, which basically you wouldn't sign it off until the client has agreed to it because they might want alterations of further addition. And if you edit the document now, it'll increase the version, but otherwise I tick email. If you've ticked the distribution control, it'll automatically tick the person, write a message to them and hit send, and that'll record that against that person's organization, against the person's name as well, and in the document register as well for proposals that you sent that to that person on the date that you did. And as I was saying, if you've captured that budget and you've updated this with the value that you're likely to win, when you go into, reporting and dashboards, one of them is submission. And the values in this over time, it's a 12 months rolling period from the current month backwards, basically shows you how many, the value of bids in the month that you did them and the current balance in the marketplace. So we're looking at just over 10 million in the marketplace at the moment, and you can see where bids have come in. And then what happens in the final part of this equation is if we win that job with Wesfarmers, we'd move it into a post-award phase. If we lose it, we'd put it into a completed phase, and it'd never go into a post-award phase. And that business logic drives the success rate values in these tables here. So we won one job in December and two in March, and the value of them were quite healthy, a little over 5 million and just over 20 million. And that's dynamic. It's happening as we update the system. The date that it occurs is based off the life cycle schedule. So if I was to go into my Wesfarmers job again, what I might do is just make this a ridiculously large number, or maybe it's not a ridiculously large number to some of the people on the phone. And then refresh my dashboard. And you can see we've got a whopping great big number there. And if I move it from, go back to the portfolio view, the submission phase into a post-award phase, one of these ones, then it'll go into down here as a win. If I cancel it, it'll go, which I'll do that because there's no cancelled. You can see massive loss here. So those dashboards are dynamically updating based on the data that you've put in the revenue budget and based on the life cycle phase. The reason that's happened in May is because that would be the date that, unfortunately, it's cancelled now, so I have to go into a, I'll go all phases. It's based on these dates here, these pre-award dates. So if I was to change those back to April, then the bar would move back to April. But normally these are updating based on when you do things. And so basically if you keep maintaining the system in a reasonably regular way, the data will be relatively accurate because the dates are updating automatically as to when things have happened. And so if I was to go back to our Wesfarmers organisation, which is where we started the presentation. Incredible to function keys when you haven't got it, only got one hand. We go back to Wesfarmers. And we go to correspondence. We should be able to see, it's filtered for documents, go all. Our conversation with Ali should be there. I haven't associated him to that issue. There's another trick. If they're not associated to the issue, then they're not going to appear. So at this point in time, I've only allocated his name. I would need him to be on the project and having correspondence. So normally the emailing out and in is what just automatically files that against that person's name. So if I go back to the Bernie & Co. Constructions, this email to Paul Bryan at bernieconstruction.com.au would automatically have tagged against him. So that correspondence view will have that email next to it. To get Ali, I would have had to have done a few more steps, which were natural steps in the process, like correspond with him around that lead, whereas in my simulation, I imagined we went from prospect through to submission loss without actually ever talking to him, which might be one of the reasons why we didn't get the deal. Okay, so that did record, hopefully. I'm going to end it now and open the floor to a flood of questions.